What's going on, everyone? It is the Derf, and today I am bringing you a Warlock build that does not really have much synergy with the meta of this season. Yes, we are talking about Arc Warlock. True, we had a lot of Arc love last season, so it makes sense. Solar, Strand, and Stasis are getting their time in the spotlight, but let's not forget Old Faithful. That is our favorite Arc builds, and today I am bringing you a build that features a fan favorite exotic piece of armor, as well as pairing that with a weapon that is an absolute beast at ad clear, and since it's a seasonal featured exotic, gets a nice bump to damage as well. So we're going to talk about it, run laps around your enemies on the battlefield. Let's get it going. Here we go. Lightning fast prismatic warlock. We're of course going to go with Storm Trance as our super. Chain arc lightning from your hands to electrified targets with devastating streams of arc light that intensify over time. Casting Storm Trance creates a jolting shockwave underneath you, and of course you can teleport forward, consuming a small amount of super energy. Now, you wouldn't necessarily think that pairing an exotic armor like this with a roaming super is going to have any kind of benefit. However, remember, we are going to get increased weapon damage with this build as well, and we're going to go through it here in a second. We're going to go with Phoenix Dive. I prefer the Burst Glide. We want the Arcane Needle so we can spam our Lightning Surge, which will of course give us additional bolt charges. We're going to go all out and go with the Storm Grenade. Again, if you have a max stack of bolt charge, your Storm Grenade is going to call down additional lightning strikes. For aspects, we're going to run with Feed the Void to feed a target with any ability to activate Devour. Your Devour effects are improved, restoring additional health and grenade energy. I don't necessarily need Feed the Void on here for anything other than health. However, with the grenade regen rate as well as the health, it's going to make you, have a lot more resistance to an already highly resistant build to begin with. Next up, we already talked about it, Lightning Surge. While sliding, activate your charge melee ability to blink forward, calling down lightning strikes that jolt targets as you rematerialize. Targets that are hit by your lightning strikes grant you stacks of bolt charge. Of course, Jolted deals with overload champs and stuns them, but bolt charge on top of bolt charge on top of bolt charge, you're going to see real quick, even though we don't have a ton of arc love in the artifact this season, the way that this build is, plus a lot of the damage buffs you can get with this build, make this one of the better arc builds you can roll with this season. For fragments, first up on the list, Facet of Purpose. Picking up an Orb of Power grants either Bolt Charge, Restoration, Frost Armor, Woven Mail, or Overshield. We're going to get tons of Bolt Charge because we're going to be generating Orbs of Power like crazy. Next up is going to be Facet of Awakening. Rapidly defeating targets with light or darkness damage or super final blows. Generates an elemental pickup of the matching damage type. We're going to be generating a ton of Ionic Traces and occasionally Tangles. Next up, we have Facet of Sacrifice. While you have an Arc, Solar, or Void buff, ability Final Blows grant bonus Darkness Transcendence energy. You're going to be able to swap in and out of Transcendence with this build if you play it right. So having that extra Transcendence to buffer you in addition to all the other abilities you're going to have is going to be a very nice thing for you. Next up, we have Facet of Balance. Rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants melee energy. Rapidly defeating targets with darkness damage grants grenade energy. Key here to always have your abilities up. Last but not least, Facet of Protection. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. While Transcendent, the effect is increased. Now, we could make an argument to swap this out with Facet of Dominance. That means your arc grenades would jolt targets. However, we have 3 lightning surges, so I don't think it's incredibly necessary to double down on lightning surge on top of taking 10 away from our grenade energy to begin with. For stat distribution, I recommend speccing into weapons, super, and melee in that order. Now, depending on how much, how many tiers you've got on each piece of armor, it may not be that difficult to get above, a T9, T8. To make this build viable, you want to get at least a T7 in all 3 of those categories, so you at least have sufficient ability regeneration. If you can get higher than a T8, you are cooking. And if you can get to T10 on any of these, again, I've been grinding for armor that I can, pair together to build the character like this. Yes, my class ability is absolutely abysmal, and my health isn't that great, but it's tolerable. But we have a fix for the class stat, and of course, you get health with each or pickup anyways, and your resilience is already maxed out at a 10, thanks to the changes to the armor. So what this means in relation to your build, the reason this is important is we're going to be taking advantage of increased weapon damage, 15% of it to be exact, and if you compare that with 3 weapons that take advantage of the artifact damage boost as well, which I am going to, that only stacks. Super, yes, 190% super energy recharge rate may not seem like, it really matters. As long as it's 100%, it's a roaming super, who cares? But being able to proc your super more often means you're going to have a lot more fun on the battlefield. Grenade at 100 puts you down to 56-second cooldown and 190% recharge rate. And a melee at a 102 is going to give you a cool 1 minute ability cooldown and a melee energy recharge rate of 190%. For weapons, you can pick from any of the following that I'm going to go through. It depends on what you are going to have to deal with when it comes to champs, but hear me out. For just general gameplay, you're not really worried about the champs, or maybe you've got them covered with Jolt and all that other stuff. Festival Flight is an excellent area denial frame. I have this rolled with Frenzy as well as Blast Distributor. There's a lot of decent perks that you can pair together on this. I also recommend Mint Retrograde. Ribbon Tail if you have a good roll. I don't like this roll on this, but I'm keeping it because it's a tier 3 weapon. The Call, a go-to for many, and Until Its Return is going to be used if you are going to be dealing with champs, and I will get to that here when we go over the artifact. In the energy slot, I feel like you only have 1 of 2 real options, but I'm going to give you 4. Centrifuge takes advantage. It's a featured exotic, so you're going to get an extra 10% damage increase from Centrifuge. You'll also get that from Lodestar. However, I don't know what it is. I initially made this build with Lodestar. Centrifuge just feels so much better. So if you haven't pulled this out in a while, maybe it's time to. You could also round this out if you want to roll with a legendary in here. Vantage Point or Come to Pass. Vantage Point is nice because you can roll it with Jolting Feedback, and Come to Pass is nice because you can roll it with Dragonfly. In the heavy slot, go ahead and get yourself a Boomslang 4FR. You can roll this thing with Jolting Feedback, and for a 3-round burst linear fusion rifle, this thing puts out some serious kick. Add to that the fact that the range and stability are decent on this, and you have a really good adaptive burst linear fusion rifle. For just general gameplay, you could roll with Crux Termination or Watchful Eye. Watchful Eye can come with Jolting Feedback, or Crux Termination, you get a reconstruction with Bipod. You can get 4 rounds in the magazine, which, is absolutely ridiculous. And if you want some really stupid fun, the Hula Baloo, you can roll with that as well if you know you're not going to be dealing with a lot of aerial enemies. My preference is the field prep with the chain reaction because it just looks so clean on screen. However, I had this gem sitting in my vault. I don't even have a single kill on it, and I'm kicking myself, which means obviously I'm going to have to go out and use this thing obsessively for no particular reason once I get done making some of these videos. But Full Shot and Rolling Storm, a Hula Baloo with this, oh my goodness, I can't believe I don't have a single kill on this. And then if you are not rolling with an exotic in your energy slot, you can take advantage of the extreme DPS boost to Thunderlord from Mantle of Battle Harmony. True, you will not be able to take advantage of a damage boost from the artifact as Thunderlord's not a featured exotic. So I think the way that we have it right now gets the best of all worlds. Your main add clear weapon is going to have additional damage. Your heavy weapon is going to inflict Jolt, which again is going to have additional damages as well. And you have your weapon stat hopefully at or near a T10, which means you're going to be able to stack on top of that damage. For the armor, Mantle of Battle Harmony, Absorption Cells, gain super energy on elemental weapon takedowns. When your super energy is full, you instead gain a temporary bonus to weapon damage of that type. Now, when you think of Arc and you think of roaming supers, you typically don't think, oh, you know what I need? I need Mantle of Battle Harmony. But hear me out. There's a reason why I have Mantle of Battle Harmony paired here and not an exotic class item with Spirit of Harmony. The reason is the additional damage buff. True, Arc is not exactly loved during the season. It is the season of Solar, is the season of Stasis, and mix in a little bit of Strand there, and then you've got yourself basically the entire season. But Some of these featured exotics, when paired together with Arc, are going to give you additional damage with Arc that weren't featured last season. And again, featuring and featured equipment and all this other stuff, that is all brand new to this season. So we're all still trying to kind of figure it out, which makes me kind of grin ear to ear when some of these other things are going to start getting featured over others. How are the metas going to change? And I'm by no means calling this build a meta build. This is mainly just a fun build. It's a fast build. It's an aggressive build. But think about it in terms of long term. Okay, so right now it's Flame Fiber and Freeze are getting the love. Well, what happens when Arc gets the love? Is Arc going to get the love later on in the season, through the artifact or whatever? Those are all things that remain to be seen. As far as the rest of the armor goes, go ahead and spec into whatever general armor mod that you need. In the helmet, you can put on a heavy ammo finder, and you can either put on, and I'm going to say this now, you can either put on a harmonic siphon ×2, or you can put on a harmonic siphon and a hands-on siphon and still have room enough for a +10 energy general mod. So if you're looking to get your super back even quicker, having a hands-on mod might be the way to go. In the arms, make sure you throw on a firepower and a heavy-handed. You can make an argument that you can switch out firepower and put on 2 heavy-handeds, but I think the balance is nice here. And then fastball, you can chuck your arc grenade a little bit further. For the exotic armor, make sure you're speccing into 2 damage resistances, 3 if you're really feeling the heat, so to speak, and need another one. And make sure you're putting on an arc ammo generation mod so that you can get additional ammo generation progress towards your heavy weapon. For the legs, make sure you put on Innervation, Invigoration, and Absolution so that you constantly are refreshing all of your abilities. And in the class item, make sure you have the class font on if your class ability is extremely low like mine. And you put on Outreach so you can spam your melee even more often. And Reaper, for the few times you're going to be using your Phoenix Dive, get that Orb of Power shortly after you use your class ability. For the artifact, I'm not going to go through everything selected here. I'm just going to hit the highlights that are only going to apply to this build. In the first column, make sure you are speccing into whatever weapons you actually have. If you don't have the weapons that I have, but you think you can make it work with some other weapons, make sure you are modding for champs. In the second column, the only one that's really, I guess there's 2. The only 2 that are really worth considering are Rapid Precision Rifling, and that's if you're using a scout rifle, or the Diviner's Discount. All scavenger mods are discounted. Remember, scavenger mods are on your legs. If you haven't used them in a while, maybe check them out. In this column, the only one that's really going to matter is Refresh Threads, possibly Elemental Benevolence, depending on if you're able to proc elemental buffs for allies, which would mean you pretty much just have to proc a Healing Rift. I'm not going to take advantage of this, but you may be able to, depending on what you spec into. And then Reciprocal Draw is only going to be applicable if you have a sidearm in the Kinetic slot. In the fourth column, Elemental Coalescence and Threaded Blast. Threaded Blast is a throwaway one because I don't really have anything else. If you are doing higher end content though, the Elemental Daze is probably going to be your best bet. Stunning a champ with an elemental weapon creates an elementally aligned explosion, applying a matching elemental debuff to them and nearby targets. So I'm thinking like overload champs, barriers, things like that. Elemental Daze is going to be the way to go. And I guess theoretically, shoulder dealing sustained projected damage against combatants while near 2 or more allies grants you damage resistance, but you're already going to have damage resistance thanks to the artifact buff to the armor that you are hopefully speccing into. In the last column, Shield Crush is a no-brainer. When we are amplified, our grenade charges faster and deals increased damage. However, keep in mind, we're not going to be able to benefit from the melee recharging faster, which is important, which is why we want to spec into melee over grenade first when it comes to our armor. So I'm taking this specifically for the grenade recharging faster and dealing additional damage. The next one you're going to want to pick up is Elemental Overdrive. Picking up an elemental pickup or tangle grants increased damage to weapons of the same element. So We're going to get bonus damage from Elemental Overdrive. We're going to get bonus damage from the artifact because we have a featured weapon in our energy and our heavy slot. And then we're going to get bonus weapon damage from our armor because our armor is at a 100 or higher. So what does that come out to? Well, it comes out to stacking damage on top of stacking damage on top of stacking damage. So you can see not all of these are going to favor an arc style build, but there's enough of them in here to make an argument that your arc build could be even more powerful than certain other seasons that didn't feature arc that you spec'd into because you just missed it so much. So either way, you're going to still be pretty darn powerful, and having featured exotics and featured armors and featured weapons really does help, really does help make every element potentially worth speccing into for every, character. So one of the reasons that I think you should try this build is, well, honestly, I threw this build together when I was messing around with Mantle of Battle Harmony, and I didn't realize that Centrifuge was a featured exotic. Then I didn't realize that I could get my weapon stat all the way up to 100 and get additional 15%. Then I also forgot that while I amplify, this weapon gradually gains overcharge and also reloads on its own as well, as long as it's in a high charge state. And final blows also cause explosions and deal blinding damage as well. When I initially made this build, I thought Lodestar would probably be the way to go because of the jolt. However, I quickly substituted in Centrifuge. You guys can let me know in the comments which one you like better, but I think Centrifuge wins out here. And this Boomslang 4FR, this linear fusion rifle is absolutely ridiculous. I'm thinking back to the first time I ever picked up the Taipan with, I forget the name of the perk, where you're standing near a bunch of allies and you're dealing increased precision damage. The jolting feedback on here is absolutely ridiculous. Add to that the featured, it's a featured weapon, so you're getting an additional 4% damage plus an additional 15% damage, and an additional 0.3% damage if you really want to get into it. And you get large ammo brick chance at 3%, which is nothing, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, but 100% of something is better than 0% of nothing. So you add all those things together and you've got yourself two heavy hitters in these two slots right here. And this is just for fun. This is just to help you get your darkness transcendence energy faster. Again, you can roll with any of these, but if you haven't picked up arc in a while, it might be worth looking into. Crown of Tempest can make a solid argument for that as well, but I really like Mantle of Battle Harmony because I get the increase in weapon damage, and oh, by the way, it's a featured exotic anyway, so I'm already getting additional damage resistance, which if there's one thing that an arc lover needs more of in their life, it's damage resistance. And that's why I think you should try this build. So if you find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a guardian out there who loves arc, thinks that arc is not really getting a lot of love this season, is looking for a way to kind of incorporate it into their gameplay, send them this video or go ahead and send them my way. My goal is to help as many people as possible. As always, I will have a dim link in the description of the video. And if by chance you are looking for a non-toxic gaming community, go ahead and hop into my Discord. It is just brewing with people on the proverbial power grind like myself, trying different things, experimenting with builds, just people helping people get through all the activities and, have some fun along the way, because the grind is long, especially for someone like me who's making builds for all three characters or trying to level up all three characters at the same time. My grind is a little bit longer than someone who just plays Warlock or just plays Titan or just plays Hunter, or thinks about the other two characters as sort of an afterthought once they get to where they want to go with their favorite characters. So, but yeah, so shout out to my Discord for making it such a welcoming community. Again, there's no toxicity. All skill levels are welcome. Just any help that you can give, or if you need help, there's plenty of people, for both. So I'm going to switch over to the boss battle. I'm going to show you this linear fusion rifle shooting the boss. Again, I didn't have any arc surge add-ons in that activity, and it was still putting out some serious damage. So I'm going to switch over so you guys can see it. Here we go, boss damage time. Now, I make sure to do my best during this run to airmail as many linear fusion shots as possible. Leave it to me to demonstrate how good a weapon is and then waste half the magazine. But them's the breaks sometimes, right? But in all seriousness, Arc received a lot of love, not too long ago in a time we all remember, and it hasn't really got a lot of buffs that you can take advantage of with the seasonal artifact. However, because things are different now with things like archetype, you can go over 100 in a lot of armor stats. You can buff your weapon damage. And now we have featured season exotics as well as featured season legendary weapons and armor. Now every element, and again, I'm coming at this from the fact that I just did a stasis build not that long ago and was kind of wowed by what I got to do with it. And now every element seemingly is, I don't know, almost of equal value to every other element. You know, every season that the meta changes, you know, now when I'm running with elements such as like Arc, for example, yes, I'm aware I'm not using Crown of Tempest. I understand I'm not using Fallen Sunstar. I understand I'm not using an OG Arc style build. But I don't feel any less powerful. I don't feel like I'm lacking in anything because I don't have a lot of seasonal mod love from the artifact, for example, which is a far cry from how I felt last season. So anyways, hope you guys liked the video, hope you guys liked the build, and hope my airmailing of my linear fusion rifle shots wasn't too embarrassing. But I will see you guys next time. Take care.